Hey everybody, welcome. My name is Dan Adcock. I'm a technical seed agronomist with WinField United in Illinois and Indiana. I've also got with me Mr. Joe Rickard, who is a regional agronomist in Ohio and the Northeast U.S. Today we're going to talk about a few basically key learnings that we've got from 2021, not just from the answer plots, but just from all the data we've collected in general, and may even bleed back a few years other than that. And kind of the goal is to take some of the insights we've got from past years and figure out a way we can use it going forward, specifically into some input and management decisions in 22. A couple of key things we're going to look at, really narrow it down to kind of two things, is one, fungicide applications and kind of how they've changed over the years, and then two, what's going on in the NP&K world, how we can take some of the stuff we've learned over the past couple of years and just some of Joe's general agronomic knowledge and how we use that in 22 for some input and management decisions. So I want to start with the fungicide piece. And really, when we've looked at fungicides in the past, it's kind of been a blanket decision, right? When we go and talk to our retailer, we say, hey, I've got X amount of corn. I'm gonna go ahead and spray it. I've got X amount of beans, whatever it might be. And we've always kind of done it as that blanket decision, and we've been at the mercy of whether the helicopter or airplane got there in time, where we were at on the list from the retailer, or when we got the acres turned in. So what's changed in that? How do we need to do this differently? And one of the big things is, as you see on this slide, we've got some data that didn't exist a few years ago, and really what this amounts to is, if you look at what's highlighted green there, we've got 6 years already in the tank of hybrid by hybrid response to fungicide ratings on each and every hybrid that we test. And we'll soon have the seventh. So 21 will be the seventh year. So we're getting a pretty big set of data. And really the important thing I want to take home here, or drive home, is that not all hybrids respond the same. Let's start looking at our fungicide application, especially in season, late season fungicide application, from a different angle. How do we figure out a way to get the most return on our investment? So my example here is, you'll see it highlighted down there in the lower right of this slide. It says $107 per acre difference. What that means is, from the highest responding hybrid that we tested this year, in 2020, versus the lowest, there was $107 an acre difference, but simply by picking a high responding hybrid, or the highest responding hybrid, versus the low. So the point there is that there is some data that's available now that we didn't have in the past. So let's take that and kind of run with it, use that to make some more informed decisions as we go forward. All your WinField United reps have access to this data. So the second thing that's changed on the fungicide thing, or there's more than two, obviously, but the second one we're going to talk about is some of the diseases that we've got in the corn belt today versus in the past. Typically we always worried about whether it was gray leaf spot or northern corn leaf blight, things that we were kind of used to seeing. Now we've got southern rust coming up from the south that's really affecting our yields, and a big one that's hitting us in the Midwest this year, and Joe's going to talk about this, is tar spot. So Joe, what have you seen kind of on the tar spot that's changed maybe how we go forward with fungicide applications?
Yeah, thanks, Dan. Appreciate being here with you this afternoon, and everybody out there in live stream land. We saw what you had mentioned, our normal, usual actors of this year: gray leaf spot, northern corn, but southern rust and tar spot have been rearing its ugly head. And the big differentiation between those two, when you look at it, is southern rust is not going to overwinter in some of our northern corn belt states that we have here. Tar spot, on the other hand, is going to overwinter. If you take a look at the slide here, you can see all the yellow counties where it's kind of tested positive, and this comes off our Crop Protection Network website there. You look at your state in Illinois, it's been found in previous years, but you get over to Ohio, and it's just normally been found in northwest part of the state previous, but now it's started creeping further east, and you can almost see some counties near Lancaster, up that northeast Erie counties there in Pennsylvania. It's also been found. you take a look at that right-hand picture right there, and it gets its name right out of the textbook. Pretty much, is if you take a paintbrush and dip it in a jar of tar or a pan of tar or black paint and just throw it right on that corn crop there, you'll see all those little dots, and exactly what you're going to see there is tar spot on there. You mentioned, not having a blanket application for a lot of these fields, which really comes into play. When we think about tar spot, high relative humidity, are we going to see it next year? We may not, depends on the severity, the weather that we have, and then a high leaf wetness. When we look at that. So when you look at areas that are bottom ground, close to a water source, or may lay wet with foggy mornings, then right around that tassel reproduction time is where we want to definitely start scouting some of these fields to make it aware as we go through. I kind of say with a lot of this fungicide stuff, and it goes without saying on a lot of things, not just agriculture, but the supply chain has been disrupted, especially from the logistics standpoint. So guys that are planning on making that fungicide application, you can see the ticker tape right at the bottom of it, and that's kind of a slogan that I've been using for guys, is if you can take product and you can keep and control that product itself, take it. A bird in the hand is worth two in the bush at the end of the day. So get as much as you can right now. The other piece that we look at that kind of fits is these puzzle pieces that we talk about, Dan, is the fertility aspect. A lot of these trade magazines want to talk about, high farm income, has been high over the past, 6-7 years that we looked at here. But when you really take a look at it, and now some of these input prices, especially fertility, N, P, K are the big ones. Those pieces from a commodity price rate. In my mind, we're, instead of exchanging pennies, we're now exchanging quarters at the end of the day. It's just a larger exchange of dollars. And if you take a look, and you can, we've got a slide here, and this comes out of Illinois. You can look right here from 1/7/21 right towards the right of that graph. You can see that it's, we've got hills and peaks since 2010, but boom, it's just taken off like a rocket ship since the springtime, and there's no sign of slowing down in what we're looking at there. So I mean, those are some things that growers are going to have to address and look at. Those growers that have done a really good job with the retailers doing grid sampling, implementing VRT applications, so that variable rate technology. Some growers are going to want to skimp this year. I'm not saying that's the right thing, but getting by with a little bit less maybe, and properly placing that fertilizer better may be exactly what we need to do here for 22 even more.
Yeah, and along with that, the neat thing is I mentioned the response to fungicide information that WinField United has. We also have that data on nitrogen. So if you are going in and saying, hey, I'm going to probably side dress some anhydrous so I can maybe use just a little bit less, or I'm going to top dress some, you don't have to do that as a blanket program either. You can come in and say, do that hybrid by hybrid and figure out which product is going to give you the biggest bang for your buck and the highest return on investment, and pick those, maybe put those in the fields that are easier to side dress, or one that you can get in and get over the top of with some top dress stuff. So this slide is available to our DSMs as well, or any WinField employee. So if you've got any questions on this, feel free. It's just a lot of data all kind of wrapped up into one piece. So Joe, before we wrap up, I did notice there's a couple questions here. So the first one that comes in says, how can we manage tar spot in 22?
Yeah, so it's kind of a double-edged sword at the end of the day, as we're definitely, as retail sellers ourselves, being out there with growers, are going to end up and have to scout, watch the weather here for 22. We're going to end up and have to scout some of these crops, because we are going to have residue that is going to have the pathogen on it as we go forward, and it's going to overwinter, so that inoculum is already going to be there. One thing that we really need to look at, it kind of reverts back to our first point that you made, Dan, is on the fungicide application. the jury's still out on whether, it's going to be one application to take care of it, or do we need two? I'm of the point here, you mentioned the airplanes and the helicopters, and that is our limiting factor that we have to get across some of these acres at least once, if not twice, if we can. So when we look at that piece, it may be taking some of our premium fungicides that we're partnered with some of our partners, and maybe spraying that around that V12, V16, V18, right before we hit tassel, to give us some protection as we get into that reproductive stage. And then we may, depending on the severity, end up and have to come in R2, R3, R4 timeframe and hit that again for a second application, because this disease is unlike our northerns, unlike our gray leaf spot. This is a big yield hit, 60, 80, up to 100 bushels I've seen can take down because of the piece of the photosynthetic activity that it's deteriorating, and the stock quality itself.
Scouting and planning, it sounds like it's a big portion there.
Big time.
One more question here looks like we've got from Jared. It is, should we use an nitrogen stabilizer in 2022 with the higher prices?
So undoubtedly, yes. When we look, yes, that's an added cost, an additional cost. But what happens when we look at some of those and we look at our nitrogen use efficiencies for hybrids and stuff? If we can end up and maybe go to instead of that 1 pound per bushel, maybe it's 0.9 or 0.8 that we can look at here, and we use that nitrogen stabilizer, one, because it's the right thing to do for the environment, and two, to keep that nitrogen there readily usable for that plant itself at the end of the day.
Sounds good. I don't see any other questions, so we're going to wrap it up. And we definitely we'd encourage you guys to, if you want any more information, look at WinFieldUnited.com. Get a hold of any of your WinField United representatives or employees. We'll be able to point you in the right direction. Thank you guys very much for your time. Call with questions.
Thank you. Safe harvest, everybody.